My father was never the emotional type. He didn't hug. He didn't say, "I love you." And when the moment finally came, he waited too long. He had 92 seconds to say it. 92 seconds before the heart monitor flatlined, before the nurse rushed in, before the silence in the room became permanent. And in those 92 seconds, my father, this proud, stubborn, untouchable man, opened his mouth and said nothing. He just looked at me, eyes wet for the first time in my life, lips trembling. But the words he had locked away for decades never made it out, and now I hear them only in the silence he left behind. Some men don't say much. My father said even less. He wasn't cruel. Let me start there. He didn't yell, he didn't hit, he didn't drink himself into forgetting who we were. But he also didn't connect. He was a man of routines, of order, of silence, a man who believed that love was shown in the things you did, not the things you said. He woke up every day at 6 a.m., even after he retired. He polished his shoes every Sunday, even if no one saw them. He paid every bill 2 days early, never missed a mortgage payment, and changed the oil in both cars himself. And yet, I couldn't remember the last time he told me he was proud of me. Growing up, I used to sit in the hallway when he got home from work, just hoping he'd ask me about school or my drawings or that girl I had a crush on. Instead, he'd hang up his coat, nod once and say, "Dinner ready?" That was his way of asking how our day went. I stopped waiting by the hallway around the time I turned 12. My mother used to tell me, "Your father loves in silence." But silence is a hard thing to grow up with. It doesn't comfort you after nightmares. It doesn't cheer at your graduation. It doesn't ask who you're becoming. And when Mom passed, that silence got louder. He and I barely spoke. The grief didn't pull us closer. It just carved a bigger canyon between us. He didn't cry at the funeral. He didn't touch her casket. He just stood there with his hands behind his back, like he was guarding something no one could see. We became strangers with the same last name. Years passed. I got married, had a son. Named him after my wife's father because I didn't want to explain why naming him after mine didn't feel right. Still, I called on his birthdays, visited on holidays. We sat in the same room and talked about weather and politics, never about feelings, never about regrets. Then came the stroke. The first one didn't take him, but it took parts of him, his right arm, some words, his appetite. The second one came less than a year later, and this time we knew it was different. When the doctor said he had days left, maybe hours, I felt something I didn't expect. Not grief, not panic. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally say the words, that after a lifetime of silence, he'd give me something I could hold on to. I was wrong. I thought the machines would make the room louder, but nothing was louder than what he wouldn't say. Hospitals have a smell. It's not just antiseptic and plastic. It's something deeper, like sterilized endings, like time slowed down and vacuum sealed. When I walked into my father's room, it was like walking into a memory I didn't want but couldn't avoid. He was there, barely conscious, tubes in his nose, IV in his arm, wires tracing his heartbeat. The beeping was steady, cold, mechanical, alive. But his eyes, they followed me, not sharply, not accusingly, but with something raw, something I didn't know how to name, regret, maybe, or fear. Or maybe he was just tired of carrying all the things he never said. The chair beside his bed creaked when I sat down. It was the same kind of chair I used to sit in when I waited for him to come home from work. Stiff, too big for me back then. Now I was the adult in the room, but I didn't feel grown. I felt like the kid who had once drawn a picture of us holding hands and slipped it under his office door. I held his hand. It felt smaller than I remembered, softer. Age had chipped away at the man I thought would never break. "I'm here, Dad," I said. He blinked slowly, then looked toward the window. The light coming in was golden, almost soft enough to believe in. The nurse came in, checked his chart, adjusted something on the machine and left without saying a word. We were alone again. Just like all those moments we shared without really sharing anything. I wanted to talk. I wanted to ask him things I should have asked years ago. Why he never said he was proud. Why he never hugged me after Mum's funeral. Why he never told me if he was afraid to die. But I didn't. I was waiting. Waiting for him to go first. Waiting for that moment. The dramatic final scene everyone imagines. The dying parent whispering, "I love you," or "I was wrong," or "You were everything." It didn't come. Instead, he just watched me. His lips moved slightly, like a word was forming. But no sound came. His eyes filled with water, but the tears never fell. And I realized then he wasn't just battling death, he was battling decades of silence, of habit, of masculinity, of generations raised to believe feelings were weakness. I squeezed his hand harder. "It's okay," I whispered. "You don't have to say anything." But deep down, I was lying. I needed him to say something. Anything. He looked at me like the words were right there. But they never came. The next morning, the doctor said it could be hours, maybe less. His breathing had changed. Shallow, irregular. The kind of breath you don't learn about until you sit beside someone who's almost done needing it. The nurse explained that hearing is the last thing to go. "Say what you need to say," she told me gently. "Even if he can't respond, he'll hear you." I nodded, but inside I was still waiting for him to go first. Waiting for the man who built our family with silence to break it, just once. I pulled the chair closer to his bed. His face looked softer now, smaller, not weak, just less guarded. His lips moved again, barely. His eyes locked with mine. There was something there, something real, and I could feel it. The moment where everything slows down, where the world gets quiet and all that exists is the space between you and the person you're about to lose. I leaned in. "Dad," I whispered. "It's okay, you can say it now, I'm here." His lips parted. His fingers twitched in mine. His throat made a sound, a dry, breathy. I held my breath, and then nothing. He closed his mouth. His chest rose once more, then fell, and didn't rise again. The heart monitor made one final sound, that flat, steady tone that means nothing and everything at the same time. A nurse came in, pressed a button, and the beeping stopped. All of it stopped. He was gone. And the words, they never came. I sat there, hands still wrapped around his, waiting for something that would never arrive. A final phrase, a sign, a breath, a whisper, but silence was all I got. And in that silence I felt every second we wasted, every holiday dinner where we avoided real conversation, every birthday card signed Dad with no message, every chance we had to be more than father and son and never took. The grief didn't hit like a wave, it hit like an echo. Not of what I lost, but of everything we never shared. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, staring at a man I loved and never really knew. And the last thing I thought was he waited too long. There was no goodbye, no last words, just a body, a bed, and everything he never said. The morning after he died felt too normal. The sun rose. The nurse brought coffee. A janitor mopped the hallway like it was just another Tuesday. But for me, something had frozen in place, like time had skipped a beat and forgot to resume. His bed was already stripped when I returned. The machines were gone. Just an empty space where a life used to be. I stood there, not knowing what to do with my hands. The chair where I sat all night was still there, facing nothing. I picked up the blanket I had brought from his house, the one he used to keep in his recliner. It still smelled faintly like old spice and engine oil, two things I'll probably never smell again without thinking of him. There was no ceremony, no moment to reflect, just a clipboard to sign and a nurse telling me, "Take all the time you need." I didn't need time, I needed a do-over. We didn't plan a big funeral. He wouldn't have wanted that. "When I go, keep it simple," he said once years ago. No fancy speeches, no dramatics. That was his style. But I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, he thought he'd say something by then. That there'd be one last chance, one last moment. I started writing his eulogy and realized I didn't know what to say. How do you summarize a man who didn't summarize himself? I wrote about his loyalty, his work ethic, the way he never missed a day of work in 38 years, the way he taught me how to change a tire, even though he didn't speak more than 10 words the entire time. I wrote about his hands, how rough they were, how steady. I wrote about his silence too. I had to, because pretending he was someone he wasn't felt like lying twice. People came, old friends, neighbors, men from the factory. They all said the same thing. He was a good man, and I believed them. But none of them knew the man I was still trying to understand. At the end of the service, I stood alone by his photo, one I had taken years ago, where he was smiling faintly, almost by accident. I looked at that face and whispered, "I wish you said it, Dad, I really do." There was no response, just the quiet hum of the ceiling lights and the ache in my chest. I didn't cry until I got home. And even then, it wasn't for the man I lost. It was for the words he took with him. He didn't speak with his voice, but maybe he left something behind that did. 3 days after the funeral, I went back to his house. It felt like stepping into a museum where nothing had been touched. Remote still sitting on the armrest, glass of water on the nightstand. The recliner angled toward the TV, like he'd just stepped out for a second. I didn't go there to clean. Not yet. I went because I didn't know where else to go. Grief makes you do strange things, like looking for a sound in a room full of silence. I walked through the house slowly, letting the memories land wherever they wanted. The hallway still had the creak in the third floorboard. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee grounds. His boots were still by the door, mud dried on the soles from a storm 2 weeks ago. I opened drawers, not because I needed anything, just because habit, curiosity, desperation maybe. That's when I found it. In the top drawer of his desk, buried under insurance papers and tax folders, was a small black voice recorder, the kind I didn't know he even owned. I turned it over in my hand. It was dusty, old, I didn't expect anything. But when I pressed play, there he was, static, then his voice. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't say it in time. I froze. His voice was rough, unsure, recorded years ago by the sound of it. I'm not good at this, talking, I mean, especially about feelings, you know that. But I want you to know, I do love you. I always have. I just never knew how to show it without messing it up. You made me proud. Even when I didn't say it, especially then. I sat down. The floor felt like it disappeared beneath me. He kept talking. Not for long. Maybe a minute or two. But enough. I hope one day you'll understand that. Silence doesn't mean absence. I was there. I saw it all. I just didn't have the words. The recording clicked off. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. I sat in that chair for over an hour, holding that recorder like it was a piece of him. Like if I let go, it would vanish. All my life, I thought he didn't say it because he didn't feel it. But maybe he said it the only way he knew how. All this time I thought he was silent, but maybe he was just afraid. I played the recording again the next day, then again the day after that. Each time I heard something different, not in the words themselves, those didn't change, but in the tone, the pauses, the hesitation, the courage it must have taken for him to sit alone, press record, and speak into the emptiness. I used to think silence meant absence, that if someone didn't say it, they didn't feel it, that if they didn't show up with words, it meant they weren't really there. But this changed something. It didn't erase the years, the missed moments, the emotional distance, but it made them human, understandable, forgivable. He didn't grow up with "I love you." He grew up with chores, work, survival. He was never taught how to say the things that matter. And maybe that's why in the end, he said them in the only way he could, to a machine with no one watching. That recording wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It didn't fix everything. But it gave me something I didn't even know I needed. Confirmation. He did love me. He was proud. He saw me, even if he never said it out loud. That message became something sacred. I copied it to my phone. I stored it in 3 different drives. I emailed it to myself. I wasn't going to lose it, not again. When I told my wife, she cried. Not because of what he said, but because of what it meant for me. She had seen me wrestle with that silence for years, had watched me try to be the kind of father who speaks, who shows up, who doesn't wait until it's too late. And now, I finally understood what I had been running from. Not his silence, my own fear that I might become like him. But the truth is, he wasn't cold. He wasn't heartless, he was just scared. Scared to say the wrong thing, scared to open a door he didn't know how to close, scared that love once spoken might sound too small for everything he felt. And in that fear, I saw myself. So I made a choice. That night, I sat on my son's bed. He was only 6, half asleep. I brushed his hair back and said it, clearly, intentionally, fully, "I love you, buddy, and I'm proud of you. Every single day." He smiled, eyes still closed, and whispered, "I know." And in that moment, something shifted, not just in me, but in the echo I was choosing to leave behind. Maybe he was speaking all along. I just didn't know how to hear him. After finding the recording, I started replaying moments from my childhood in my head. Not the big ones, but the ones I had forgotten or ignored or misunderstood. Like the time he spent 3 hours fixing my bike, silently, after I left it out in the rain. I thought he was just mad at me for being careless. Now I wonder if that was his way of saying, "You matter." Or the night before my first job interview, when he left a necktie hanging on my doorknob. Pressed, perfect, the same one he wore to his own interview 30 years ago. He didn't say, "You've got this." But now I think that tie was his way of trying. He was never one for words, but maybe he was always trying to father me in the only language he knew, action, trying to show love in oil changes and working late and filling up the gas tank so I wouldn't have to, trying to build something steady, not warm, but dependable. I used to think love was loud, that it had to be said over and over to mean anything. But now, I'm not so sure. There's a quiet kind of love that exists in showing up, in remembering what kind of coffee you drink, in never letting your car hit empty, in staying. He stayed. Through my worst years, through Mum's funeral, through every visit, where we barely spoke, he stayed. And that means something, maybe everything. The thing about grief is that it doesn't just mourn the person, it mourns the version of them you'll never get, the conversations you never had, the father you always wanted and never got to meet. But that recorder, those 90 seconds of cracked, uncertain honesty, gave me something I never expected. Permission. Permission to remember him fully, not just as the silent figure in the chair, but as the man who tried. And now when I think of him, I don't just think of what he didn't say, I think of what he left behind. Not just the house, not just the silence, but me. I'm his echo, but I get to choose the volume. I thought I'd carry this forever, but maybe some things aren't meant to be carried. Maybe they're meant to be released. I used to replay his final moments like a punishment, like maybe if I watched closely enough, I'd see something I missed, a signal, a twitch, a whisper, anything that would rewrite that silence into something softer. But that's over now. The day I found the recorder, the day I heard his voice, it didn't erase the pain, but it gave it shape. And once pain has shape, it can be named. And once it's named, it can be put down. I've stopped trying to rewrite our story, stopped wishing he had been someone else, stopped blaming myself for needing words he couldn't give, because the truth is, my father gave me what he had, and I gave him what I could. And sometimes in this life that has to be enough. I've learned that love doesn't always come wrapped in warmth. Sometimes it comes in silence, in effort, in being there even when you don't know how to say why. And now I don't need to carry the question anymore. Not why didn't he say it? Not what if I had asked? Not was I enough? I was, and he was. In our own imperfect, broken, unfinished way, we were enough. I keep the recorder in a drawer beside my bed, not to listen to every night, but just to know it's there, like he's still there too. And when I miss him, I don't listen to the words. I remember the sound of his voice, the breath between his sentences, the effort it took him to say something he never could in person. That effort was love. And now I say it often, to my son, to my wife, to myself. I say it because I can, Because I won't wait. Because I refuse to let love rot in silence. That's the legacy he left me. Not in what he said, but in what he almost said. And in the man I choose to be now, that's enough. Not everyone gets to hear I love you, but sometimes hearing the silence is enough. I used to think closure came from words, the right ones said at the right time with the right voice. But now I know. Closure doesn't always arrive on schedule. Sometimes it shows up years late, in a drawer, on an old recorder, in a voice that's already gone. My father didn't say it out loud. Not when I needed it, not when he had the chance, but he left it behind. And that counts for something. We spend so much of our lives waiting for the apology, the explanation, the affirmation. Waiting for someone to make sense of the love we only think we deserve. But maybe the bravest thing we can do is stop waiting. Say it now, mean it now. Be the first voice in a family of silence. I never got the words from him, but I gave them to my son. And now when I hear my little boy say, "I love you too, Dad," I realize something. I didn't break the silence. I transformed it, because silence isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the soil, and in the right hands, with enough love, it can grow something beautiful. If you've ever waited too long to say something, if someone you loved never said it back, then maybe this story was for you. Here at The Quiet Goodbye, we don't just tell stories, we remember the moments that still echo. Subscribe and join us, because some truths only come in whispers, and some goodbyes still need to be heard.